Welcome back to the deep dive. If you are currently standing at that intersection of English learning and, well, high-stakes comprehension.
Yeah, where things get serious.
Exactly. Whether it's prepping for a focus test like the IELTS, or maybe just trying to, boost your understanding when you're faced with a rapid-fire, real-world conversation.
Which happens all the time.
Right. Then this deep dive is pretty much custom built for you. We've gathered a really powerful stack of source material here. It outlines 10 essential skills and strategies.
And these aren't just about ticking boxes on an exam.
No, definitely not. They're designed to fundamentally upgrade your auditory fluency.
Right.
We're really moving beyond that basic idea of just, passive exposure.
Listening to things in the background.
Yeah, this is more like a strategic manual. It's for achieving genuine instant comprehension. Okay, let's unpack this then. Our mission today is to transform that kind of casual hearing into really active understanding.
Extracting maximum meaning.
From that fleeting stream of spoken English, it just disappears so fast.
And that transformation, that targeted approach, it's absolutely vital. Because, think about spoken information. It's not like reading.
Right, where you can just go back over it.
Exactly. The words are stable on the page when you read.
Mm-hmm.
But listening, the data is, well, ephemeral. It's there once, often fast, maybe with tricky accents.
If you miss it.
You miss it, you can't hit rewind in the real test. So the strategies we've sort of distilled today, they aim to bridge that gap.
Between just hearing the sounds.
And actually capturing the meaning instantly and importantly under pressure.
Okay.
So to structure this for you, we're looking at 4 crucial areas. They're all interconnected, really. First, strategic analysis. That means understand the test format and using practice diagnostically.
Not just for scores.
Precisely. Second, we'll dive into the daily grind, the skill building you need to condition your ears and mind.
The habits.
Yep. Third, we get tactical, specific in-test tactics, focusing a lot on prediction and how to handle paraphrasing. That's a big one.
Yeah. Always tricky.
And finally, we'll touch on the mental game. Often overlooked, but it ties everything together.
Okay, sounds like a solid plan. Let's start with that landscape then, right? So the foundation, as you said, understanding the battlefield, our sources are really insistent on this. You absolutely must get familiar with the structure before you start hammering practice tests.
Yeah, internalize it.
It's not just knowing, how many questions there are. It's about prepping your brain for that specific rising curve of difficulty the IELTS listening test uses.
And the test structure, it's quite clever, really. It's designed to mimic a kind of progression from simple, everyday chat.
Like booking a room.
Exactly.
Right.
All the way through to complex academic stuff. It's actually a pretty good measure of real-world English function when you think about it.
Okay.
What's fascinating here, I think, is that knowing the pattern, knowing there are these 4 distinct sections, it removes the surprise factor. And that helps you manage the increasing cognitive load.
Cognitive load, meaning how much brain power it takes. Yeah, exactly. Think about the difference between the sections. Section 1. It's usually your simplest interaction. Maybe 2 people arranging a rental, booking something, getting directions, standard stuff.
Standard stuff. Conversational language. The information is often logistical names, numbers, times, addresses. Your main job is capturing those specific details accurately.
Okay, straightforward enough.
Then, section 2 steps up a bit. It's usually a monologue, like talk about a local event, maybe a guided tour description, something like that.
So one person speaking for longer.
Right. The language might be a bit more formal, but you're still just following one speaker's main points or description. The focus is clear.
But then you mentioned this rising curve. This is where, I guess, the surprise factor can be dangerous if you're not ready. The shift into section 3.
Precisely. That's where the whole cognitive landscape changes quite dramatically. Section 3 often brings in 2 or sometimes 3 speakers.
Ah, okay. Like students.
Often students discussing a project, maybe debating different approaches, planning research. Now, you're not just tracking what is said, but who said it.
And whether they agree or disagree.
Exactly. That shift to multi-speaker conversation, it exponentially increases the challenge. You're juggling more information streams.
Right.
And then comes section 4, the final hurdle. This is usually a full-on academic monologue. Think university lecture snippet.
Okay. Dense stuff.
Dense stuff. Technical vocabulary, complex sentence structures, abstract ideas. Your brain has to switch gears instantly, from tracking maybe a casual planning discussion to analyzing complex academic content.
Wow. Okay. So just knowing that pattern exists.
It helps massively.
Yeah.
You remove the element of surprise. When you hear that introduction, you will now hear a conversation between two students. Your brain braces itself.
It knows what's coming. Dialogue tracking, maybe some academic terms.
Instead of being caught off guard by the sudden shift in density or the number of voices, preparing your brain, getting it ready for that rising challenge, it really is half the battle won before the audio even starts playing.
I get the pattern recognition part, that makes sense, but isn't that kind of standard test prep advice? If the real goal is fluency, why get so hung up on what feels like an artificial test format?
Well, yes, it's artificial in a sense, but it's also predictive. And here's a key tactical point from the sources. The accents.
Ah, right.
The variety.
Exactly. British, Australian, American, Canadian, they mix them up. Now, if you know, Section 1 is often, say, a service provider and a customer.
Like a hotel booking.
Yeah. You can almost predict there might be an accent contrast. Maybe a British receptionist talking to an American guest, or vice versa. The test forces you to switch your auditory reference frame on the fly.
Which is actually a really useful real-world skill.
Totally. It's key for global communication. So mastering the format isn't just about the sections. It's about mastering these predictable variations in accent delivery and content density as you move through. Hashtag tag 1.2. Using practice tests as diagnostic tools. Tip 3. Okay, that focus on variation leads us neatly into the next strategy. Tip number 3 in our sources. Using those practice tests not just to get a score, but as a diagnostic tool, like a scalpel, you said.
Yeah, because we see it all the time, right? Learners just grinding through test after test, maybe getting burnt out.
And not actually improving much.
Exactly. That pure volume approach, it can even reinforce bad habits if you don't stop and figure out why you made the mistakes. You've absolutely nailed the core issue there. Inefficiency. Our sources really emphasize this. The diagnostic process has to go way beyond just checking the answer key. This is where you shift gears from, let's say, passive study to really critical, intense self-analysis. Okay, intense self-analysis. What does that actually look like in practice? Well, after you finish a practice test, you need to dedicate basically equal time, maybe even more, to dissecting the errors. Don't just mark it wrong, figure out why it was wrong.
Okay.
And it helps to categorize the failures. We can kind of break errors down into 3 main types, which makes it more actionable.
Right. What are they?
First, you've got what we could call acoustic errors. This is where the sound itself tripped you up. Maybe an unfamiliar accent, or someone speaking really fast, or even background noise in the recording.
Like mishearing a number, maybe.
13 versus 30.
Classic example. Or maybe an Australian speaker's vowel sound and a word like data just threw you off because you weren't expecting it. That's acoustic.
Okay, makes sense. Second type.
Second is lexical errors. Lexical meaning related to words. So you heard the word perfectly clearly.
But you didn't know what it meant.
Either didn't know the definition, or maybe you didn't recognize it as a synonym for a keyword that was in the question itself. This links heavily to paraphrasing, which we'll definitely get into more detail on later. Right. Vocabulary gaps or synonym trouble.
Okay. And the third?
The third category is concentration or tracking errors. This is where you basically just lost your place.
Mind wandered off?
Could be. Or maybe you got confused, especially in Section 3 with multiple speakers trying to follow who's saying what. Or maybe in Section 4, the lecture part, the content just got really dense and you couldn't keep up. You missed the transition or the key point.
That categorization is really helpful. Acoustic, lexical, concentration. But how does a learner practically do this intense self-analysis? Sounds like quite a bit of work after already doing the test.
It is intensive, yeah, but honestly, it saves potentially weeks of just unfocused, generalized practice later. The single most effective step here, according to the sources, is targeted transcription.
Transcription, you mean writing out what was said?
Exactly, for the specific section where you missed the answer. Listen to that audio segment maybe 5-6 times. Try to write down exactly what you hear. Then, if you still can't get it, look at the official transcript if you have one. And compare what you thought you heard versus the reality.
Precisely. This forces you to pinpoint the exact sound or word or phrase that caused the confusion. Did you mishear a P for a B? Did you not know that specific idiom? Was it the speed?
So it's very specific feedback.
Very specific. And then you look for patterns. If you consistently miss questions involving numbers, for example, your focused practice for the next week isn't just listen to more English. It's find audio with lots of numbers, maybe financial news, reports, statistical summaries.
Targeting the weakness directly.
Exactly. This diagnostic approach lets you target that, that 20% of error types that are probably causing 80% of your problems. It's just much more efficient.
Okay, so we know how to diagnose the weaknesses. Now let's talk about building that daily muscle. This involves shifting, as you said earlier, from just passive hearing to genuine active listening.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
Hearing is easy, it just happens. But understanding meaning, especially complex meaning, that takes real commitment. And the source material really stresses that this daily exposure, it needs to be sustainable. Like, don't force yourself to listen to dry academic lectures every day if you find them incredibly boring.
Right, you'll just switch off or give up.
Exactly. Pick sources you actually enjoy. Podcasts on your favorite sport, documentaries about space, TED Talks on, I don't know, cooking or psychology, whatever genuinely interests you. That curiosity is what keeps the engine running for active listening.
That sustainability is key. And this is where we need to define what active listening really means in this context. It's not just letting the sound waves hit your ears.
It's interacting with it somehow.
Yes, interacting mentally. We can think about pushing yourself through different levels of comprehension during your daily practice.
Levels. Okay, like what?
Well, level 1 is basic gist comprehension. After listening to a segment, can you summarize the main idea in a sentence or two? What was it generally about?
Okay, the big picture.
Yep. Level 2 is detail comprehension. Can you recall specific things mentioned? Names, dates, key examples, reasons given. Most learners kind of stop here. They focus on catching facts.
Right, checking if they heard the specifics correctly. So what's the next level? The truly active part.
Level 3 is where the real active listening happens. It's inferential and deductive comprehension. This is about reading between the lines, understanding the speaker's purpose, their tone, the implied meaning, and critically, it involves prediction.
Ah, prediction again. We mentioned that for the test tactics.
Exactly. But you practice it daily. Active listeners are constantly, almost subconsciously, predicting what's coming next. If a speaker outlines a problem.
You mentally prep for them to suggest a solution.
Right. Or if they state a strong opinion, you anticipate they'll either provide supporting evidence or maybe address a counterargument. You're thinking along with the speaker.
So it's like you're one step ahead mentally.
Kind of. This daily habit of low-level prediction, it really strengthens your ability to grasp the main flow of ideas, even if you happen to miss a specific word or phrase here and there, because you already have a sense of the direction the speaker is heading.
It's like the difference maybe between being a passenger just looking out the window and actually being the driver who's constantly scanning the road ahead.
That's a great analogy. Exactly that. You're actively navigating the information stream, not just being carried along by it. Hashtag 2.2. Training the ear for accents. Tip 4.
Okay, let's circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the accent challenge. This comes up so often as a major source of anxiety, especially for a test like IELTS.
Huge one, yeah.
If you've only ever really trained your ear with, say, standard American English from movies, then suddenly hearing a strong Scottish accent or a fast Australian one.
It can feel like the rug's been pulled out from under you. Mid-sentence, suddenly it feels like a different language almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the solution seems obvious, but needs discipline. Deliberate, diversified exposure. The sources basically say, be proactive. You have to seek it out.
Right. If you usually watch American sitcoms, make a conscious effort to find a popular British drama, or maybe watch news from an Australian channel, or listen to Canadian podcasts.
And it's not passive watching or listening. It's targeted acoustic immersion. You're intentionally feeding your brain different sound patterns.
And this goes deeper than just recognizing, oh, that sounds British. You're saying it actually trains the ear mechanism itself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We're training the ear and the brain behind it to accept phonetic variation more easily. Think about a simple sound like the R sound.
Okay.
In many standard British accents, the R at the end of a word like car or teacher is often dropped or pronounced very softly. It's called non-rhotic.
Right. Car becomes ka.
Sort of, yeah. But in standard American English, which is rhotic, that sort of sound is usually pronounced quite strongly. Car, teacher.
Oh.
Now, if your ear is only tuned to the rhotic R, when a non-rhotic speaker says teacher, your brain might hesitate for a split second. It might misfire or at least expend extra cognitive energy trying to match the sound to the word it expects.
A tiny processing delay, but in a fast test. That delay can be fatal for catching the next word. Another quick example, vowel sounds. Think of words like dance or bath. Ah, yeah, the classic difference.
Right.
British English often uses a longer bath. American English typically uses a shorter bath. Again, neither is right or wrong, they're just different. So exposing yourself to lots of British TV shows or Australian YouTubers, actually trains your ear to just accept these shifts automatically, like turning off an internal alarm bell that rings when something sounds different.
That's a perfect way to put it. You move past your inherent bias towards the accent you learn first, or the one you hear most often. Every time you successfully understand someone speaking with a different accent, you're building what linguists sometimes call auditory flexibility.
Auditory flexibility. I like that.
It just means that in the test situation, those different accents stop being hurdles or distractions. They just become, different ways people say the same word. And that frees up your brain power to focus entirely on understanding the actual meaning, the concepts being discussed. Hashtag Tactic 2.3, the concentration workout, tip 7.
Okay, flexibility is one thing, but what about just pure stamina? The listening test demands around 30 minutes of pretty much uninterrupted high-level focus.
Yeah, that's a long time to maintain peak concentration.
Definitely. And losing focus for even, say, 10 or 15 seconds can mean you miss multiple answers, especially because you don't control the pace, the recording just keeps going, moving you between question blocks, whether you're ready or not.
It's relentless in that sense.
So the source material talks about concentration like it's a muscle. It needs a workout. You can't just show up on test day and expect to magically focus for 30 minutes straight if you haven't practiced it. No, absolutely not. The recommendation is quite practical. Start small. Try listening to, say, a 10-minute chunk of relevant audio, maybe a TED Talk or a news report, without pausing, without checking your phone, 0 distractions, just pure listening for 10 minutes.
Pure, focused listening. Then, once that feels comfortable, gradually increase the duration. Push it to 15 minutes, then 20, then 25, aiming to eventually handle 30 minutes or even slightly more, simulating the test conditions. It really is like mental weightlifting. You build up endurance over time.
And tied directly into this concentration training, you mentioned something earlier, the subtitle trap.
Yes, the big one. This is probably the single biggest crutch that holds learners back from developing genuine listening skills.
Because it feels helpful, right? You can see the words, you confirm what you're hearing.
It feels helpful, but what's actually happening is your brain is defaulting to reading. Reading is usually faster and feels easier, more familiar than processing complex spoken language, especially with accents or speed. So you think you're practicing listening, but you're mostly practicing reading along.
Okay, I can see that. But I bet a lot of learners feel really anxious about just switching subtitles off completely. Going cold turkey seems risky, especially if you're trying to follow, say, a complex discussion or a fast movie dialogue. How do you suggest people wean themselves off that visual aid responsibly?
Yeah, going cold turkey can be overwhelming and demotivating. It's definitely better as a phased approach. The sources suggest a crucial transitional stage first.
Which is?
Use subtitles, but only in English. This is absolutely key. No subtitles in your native language.
Why only English?
Because English subtitles still force your brain to connect the English sounds you're hearing with the correct English words and their spelling. It reinforces that sound symbol correspondence in English. Native language subtitles just bypass English processing altogether. Okay, so phase 1, English subtitles only, right? Get comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Feel like you could generally follow along. Then comes the harder step. Start turning them off, but maybe not for the whole show immediately.
Like just for a few minutes at first?
Exactly. Maybe try watching the first 5 minutes of a show or video with no subtitles at all. See how much you can grasp. Then maybe turn them on for the next bit if you need to, but then try another 5 minutes without them later.
Gradually increasing the no subtitle time.
Precisely. You're gradually increasing the periods where you rely purely on auditory processing. You're forcing that shift from visual dependence to auditory competence. Your ultimate goal has to be handling a full 30-minute stretch of challenging English audio without needing that visual safety net.
And the confidence boost when you realize you can do that must be huge going into the test.
Massive. Knowing your ears alone are reliable is incredibly empowering. Hashtag tag 2.4. Vocabulary acquisition in context, tip 8.
All right, another potential roadblock, even if you're concentrating hard and your ear is tuned to accents, is simply not knowing enough words. Or maybe knowing the word but not recognizing it quickly enough.
Yeah, a vocabulary gap can definitely derail you. You might hear a crucial word perfectly clearly, but if your brain takes, say, 2 or 3 seconds to dredge up the meaning from memory.
The audio has already moved on 2 sentences.
Exactly. You've missed the next piece of vital information while you were busy processing the last one. It's all about recognition speed.
So how do we build that speedy recognition? It's not just about memorizing long lists of words from a textbook, is it?
No, definitely not. Our sources are very strong on this. You absolutely must learn new words in context. This is fundamental for building the kind of neural pathways you need for instant recall under pressure. Okay, in context. What does that mean practically? Instead of just word definition, instead of just writing down, say, accommodation, a place to live or stay, you should record it within a meaningful sentence or phrase, ideally one you heard or one you create that's relevant to you. Like, finding suitable accommodation near the university can be tricky.
Perfect. Or, I need to confirm the price of the accommodation before I book the flights. You're creating a little mental scene or structure around the word.
So the method is about embedding the word in a network of meaning, not just isolating it.
Precisely. Contextual learning creates much stronger, faster associations. When you hear accommodation in the test, your brain doesn't just go to a dictionary definition, it accesses that whole network, making recall much quicker. And for IELTS specifically, are there particular types of vocabulary we should focus on learning in context?
Yes, definitely. You need to focus on high-frequency vocabulary, of course, but pay special attention to words commonly used in academic settings or logistical discussions, as those feature heavily in sections 3 and 4, and even section 1 sometimes.
Like words for?
Think about words for classifying or analyzing information. Words like quantify, categorize, derive, assess, implications. Or words used in discussions and debates, dispute, contention, rebuttal, consensus, furthermore. Or words related to planning and organization timeline, schedule, logistics, resources, feasibility.
Okay, so academic and organizational language is key. It is. And here's another layer. When you learn a new word in context, say logistics, don't just learn its definition. Also actively look up and learn its common synonyms or related phrases. Why synonyms specifically?
Because of paraphrasing. Remember, in the test, if the question paper uses the word logistics, they discuss the logistics of the event. The audio recording is highly likely to use different wording.
So the speaker might say something like, we talked about the management of the event, or we finalized the coordination needed.
Exactly. Your brain has to be primed to instantly connect logistics in the question with management or coordination in the audio. You're not just training for definition recall, you're training for instant recognition of meaning equivalence. That's non-negotiable at test speed.
Okay. Let's shift gears now. We've talked about building the foundational skills day to day. Now let's get right into the test room itself. What tactics can you deploy during the test?
Right, the heat of the moment stuff.
And the first big one seems to be about thinking ahead, not just reacting. This is where the power of prediction comes in again, but in a very specific, timed way.
Yes, this is tip 5 in our sources, and it's crucial. The listening test isn't, or shouldn't be, a purely passive activity where you just wait for answers to hit you. You need to be aggressive, mentally.
And you use that little bit of silence before the audio starts for each section.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get precious few seconds, maybe 30 seconds or so, to look at the questions for that section before the recording begins. You need to use every single one of those seconds strategically.
And the goal isn't to read every word, right? It's to predict what, exactly. The goal is simple but powerful. Anticipate the type of information you need to listen for. Look at the question, especially gap-fill questions, and predict the grammatical type and the logical category of the missing answer. Okay, give me an example. Sure. Let's say you see a question like, the total cost of the holiday package is pounds. What are you listening for? A number. Specifically, a currency amount.
Exactly. Your brain is now primed. It's filtering the incoming audio specifically for numerical information related to cost.
Yeah.
You're not trying to catch every single word. You're listening for a number.
Okay. What about another type? All right, imagine the question is, the main lecture will be delivered in the building by Professor Jones. Okay, that's asking for a place. Probably a building name, or maybe a specific room name or number.
Right.
A location. Or maybe students reported feeling more after the workshop. That sounds like it needs an adjective. Describing a feeling or state, like confident, prepared, anxious.
Precisely. You're predicting the grammatical function, noun, verb, adjective, number, name, date. This simple act of anticipation, it does something really important cognitively.
What's that?
It significantly reduces the mental strain. Instead of trying to process everything the speaker says with equal weight, you've already narrowed your focus. You've set up a kind of high-precision filter in your brain.
So only the relevant type of information really flags itself as important when you hear it.
Exactly. It allows you to latch onto the potential answer much more quickly and accurately when it's spoken. And given how fast the audio can move, that speed boost from prediction is absolutely crucial. Hashtag tag 3.2. Mastering keywords and paraphrasing, tip 6.
Okay, so prediction sets the stage, tells you what type of word to listen for. But keywords are what actually anchor your focus to the specific topic of the question, right?
Absolutely. Prediction gives you the frame. Keywords give you the content hook. This is tip 6. Again, in those vital seconds before the audio starts, you're not just predicting the answer type. You're quickly identifying and underlining or circling the core content words in the question itself.
The nouns, verbs, names, dates that carry the main meaning.
Yes. The words that, if you hear them or something very much like them in the recording, signal that the answer's probably close by.
So if the question was like, what was the man's main reason for visiting London?
Your anchors there would be man, main reason, and London. When you hear the speaker start talking about a man's trip or about London or using words related to purpose or reasons.
Your ears perk up. You know the relevant information is likely coming right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's your trigger. Now,
Boy.
here's where it gets, well, really interesting. And frankly, quite tricky for many learners.
But
It's that the IELTS examiners are very good at testing true comprehension, not just simple word spotting, which means
they don't use the exact same words.
almost never. The audio recording will rarely use the exact keywords that are written in the question paper. This is the challenge of paraphrasing and synonym recognition.
Right. So in your example, you might be listening really hard for the word London.
You could completely miss the answer because the speaker in the recording refers to it as the capital city or his trip to the UK's main hub.
Or the question uses the phrase, an increase in student numbers.
And the audio talks about higher enrollment figures or more people signing up for the course. It means the same thing, but uses different vocabulary.
Okay, that can feel really frustrating for learners. It almost feels like the test is deliberately trying to trick you sometimes.
I understand why it feels that way, but it's really designed to test your flexibility with language, your mastery of nuance, which ultimately is a key part of real fluency. You need to understand ideas, not just match words.
So how do you train for that specifically? How do you get better at catching paraphrases?
You have to train specifically for it. The sources suggest consciously breaking down the types of paraphrasing you encounter in practice materials.
Okay, what are the common types? Well, first, there's the most straightforward. Lexical substitution. That's just simple synonym swapping. Like the question says difficult, the audio says challenging.
Exactly. Or important becomes crucial, significant, vital. Expensive becomes high cost or maybe even prohibitive. That's level 1.
Okay, what's next?
Second, look out for grammatical transformation. This is where the underlying meaning is the same, but the sentence structure or grammar changes. A common one is active versus passive voice.
Ah, okay. So the question might say, the new policy was implemented by the council. Passive.
And the audio might say, the council implemented the new policy. Active. The core action implement and the agent, council, and the object policy are all there, but the structure flips. You need to be listening for the core meaning regardless of the grammatical dress it's wearing.
Got it. Listening for the core action. And the third type, you said this was the most complex.
Yeah. Third is what we might call conceptual restructuring. This is where the link between the question and the audio isn't a direct synonym or grammatical shift, but more about understanding the overall concept.
Okay, example.
Imagine the question asks about the main benefit of a new recycling scheme. The audio might not use the word benefit at all. Instead, the speaker might discuss how the scheme reduced landfill waste by 20% and saved the council money on disposal fees.
Oh, so you have to deduce that reduced waste and save money are the benefits?
Exactly. You have to connect those specific outcomes back to the broader concept asked about in the question. This requires deeper comprehension.
Okay, that's really useful. So the actionable advice here is...
When you're reviewing your practice tests, don't just look at the right answer. Go back to the transcript, write down the exact wording used in the question and the exact sentence or phrase used in the audio recording that contain the answer. Put them side by side.
And consciously analyze how they paraphrased it. Yeah. Was it a synonym? A grammar change? A conceptual link?
Yes. By doing this repeatedly, you build up a powerful mental library of the common ways information is rephrased in these kinds of contexts. It transforms the trick into a predictable pattern you're ready for. Hashtag 3.3. Efficient note-taking shorthand, tip 9.
Right, this makes sense. But while you're doing all this predicting, keyword spotting, and paraphrase anticipating, you also often have to physically write things down, especially for gap fill or table completion questions.
Yeah, particularly in Section 1, maybe Section 2, sometimes even Section 4 with specific details.
Names, addresses, phone numbers, dates, specific terms, and the audio doesn't wait for you to write neatly. So writing speed becomes critical, but without losing your listening focus.
Absolutely. This brings us to tip 9, the necessity of developing some kind of efficient personal shorthand. Shorthand, like secretary skills from the old days, not quite that complex usually, but the basic principle is the same. Maximize your cognitive bandwidth. Writing out full words like information or appointment or Wednesday takes way too much time and, crucially, too much mental focus away from listening to the next thing being said. So shorthand is about capturing the essential details in the quickest, most abbreviated form possible.
Exactly. We're talking about using common abbreviations that everyone knows, like maybe info for information, apt for appointment. Using symbols like the ampersand and for and, maybe wame for with, wuf for without. Using numbers where possible.
So instead of writing because,
use BC or cause instead of number. Maybe the hash symbol, hashtag, perfect. Or maybe just no. For dates and times, use numerals. Mon 15th, 3 p.m. for quantities or frequencies. 2x for twice a week.
Okay, so standard abbreviations, plus maybe some personal ones you develop yourself. Like I saw an example, BKGRM2N could mean booking a room for 2 nights.
Exactly. Or MTG TMRW 3 p.m. for meeting tomorrow at 3 p.m. It needs to be quick and intuitive for you.
But isn't there a risk here? If your shorthand is too quick or too messy or too personal, you might not be able to read it properly yourself later when you have those 10 minutes at the end to transfer your answers to the official answer sheet.
That's a totally valid concern.
You could end up making a silly spelling mistake or writing the wrong number just because you couldn't decipher your own scribbles. That seems like an unnecessary error.
It is a risk, and that's why the shorthand needs to be reasonably clean and, above all, consistent. You have to practice it so you know what your own symbols mean reliably. It needs to be legible enough to you for that transfer process.
So it's a trade-off. It's a necessary trade-off, I'd argue. You sacrifice maybe perfect legibility in the moment of intense listening in order to preserve your focus on the incoming audio stream. You accept that slight risk of misinterpretation during transfer because that risk is probably far less damaging overall than completely missing the next 1 or 2 questions because you were too busy writing out the previous answer in full. Okay, that makes sense. Preserve focus first. So the tip is, develop a system, use standard things where possible, add personal shortcuts, and practice it until it's automatic and readable enough for transfer. Exactly. Practice your shorthand as much as you practice your listening. All right, we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked format, daily skill building, in-test tactics like prediction and keywords and shorthand. Now we arrive at that 4th pillar you mentioned right at the start. The mental game. Yes, tip 10 in the sources. And arguably, the one that underpins everything else.
Because none of these brilliant strategies matter much if, on the day, panic just completely takes over. Stress in that kind of high-pressure test environment, it feels like a guaranteed way to just freeze up and miss even easy questions you'd normally get right.
Absolutely. This is where all that preparation meets performance psychology. We really have to dedicate some serious thought to tactical emotional management during the test itself, because a panic cycle is incredibly vicious and common.
What do you mean by the panic cycle? It goes like this. You miss one answer, maybe it was a name you didn't catch or a number that went by too fast. Immediately, your brain latches onto that error. Oh no, I missed it. I don't know what it was.
Exactly. That internal monologue starts. I missed it. How could I miss that? I'm probably failing now. What if I missed the next one too? That internal noise, that fixation on the past mistake, consumes the cognitive resources, the attention, the working memory that you desperately need to process the current audio input for the next question. And so you inevitably miss the next question too. Guaranteed. You miss the next one, maybe the one after that, all because you couldn't let go of the first mistake. It spirals.
Okay, that sounds terrifyingly familiar to anyone who's taken a stressful test. So what is the antidote? What's the recovery rule? How do you break out of that fixation loop instantly? The recovery rule has to be absolute and immediate. If you realize you've missed an answer, you cut your losses instantly. Mentally, you give yourself maybe 1-2 seconds max to acknowledge the gap. Okay, missed that one. And then you immediately force your focus onto identifying the keywords and predicting the answer type for the very next question on the paper. No dwelling, no trying to replay the audio in your head, no trying to guess the missed answer right then.
None of that. That time is gone. It's a sunk cost. Trying to retrieve it will only cost you more points down the line. Your only job is to be 100% ready for the next piece of information.
That takes serious mental discipline, though, especially when you're feeling stressed.
It does. And the source material actually suggests practicing some quick, actionable reset techniques you can use silently during the test if you feel panic rising. Because the test is 9-stop, you need a way to re-anchor yourself very quickly.
Like what kind of techniques?
One simple one is described as the 5-second reset. If you feel overwhelmed or realize you've missed something, consciously take one deep, slow, controlled breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And as you do that, focus all your attention for just those few seconds on something purely physical, purely tactile.
Like the feeling of the pencil in your hand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or the texture of the paper under your fingers, or the feeling of your feet on the floor. Just for 5 seconds, shift your entire focus from the internal panic spiral to an external neutral sensation. It can be surprisingly effective at just breaking that mental loop and allowing you to refocus on the task ahead.
Okay, a quick grounding technique. It sounds like this is about training yourself not just to be knowledgeable about English, but to be mentally resilient.
It is absolutely about resilience. And that resilience, that mental discipline, it's also the ultimate source of genuine confidence in the test room.
Confidence isn't just something you have or don't have.
No way. Confidence, particularly in a test situation, isn't some innate personality trait you're born with. It is almost always a direct product of deliberate, targeted preparation.
Because you know you've done the work.
Exactly. When you have systematically trained your ear for different accents, when you have drilled the prediction habit daily, when you've practiced your shorthand, and crucially, when you have diagnosed and worked on your specific weaknesses through that error analysis, you walk into the test room knowing, intellectually and experientially, that you have equipped yourself as best you can to handle the challenges.
So the feeling of panic is often just the brain reacting to feeling overwhelmed by something unfamiliar or unpredictable.
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
By making the format, the tasks, the accents, the paraphrasing styles familiar through rigorous practice, you reduce the perceived threat level.
Yeah.
And when the threat level goes down, the panic response naturally diminishes. So yeah, treat your mindset, your mental preparedness as arguably the most important tactic of all. #outro.
Wow. Okay. This has been a really comprehensive deep dive. We've essentially charted a pathway here, moving from just basic listening towards genuine mastery of English auditory comprehension. And we've specifically leveraged the structure and demands of a test like IELTS to build skills that are actually robust and useful in the real world, too.
Yeah, the test becomes a training ground, in a way.
Exactly. So let's try and synthesize these 10 key strategies, these insights, into maybe 3 final pillars for you, the listener, to take away.
Sounds good.
Strategic diagnosis. This is all about knowing your enemy, right? Fully master the test format, the 4 sections, the rising difficulty, the accent mix. And crucially, use your practice test results not just for a score, but to intensely analyze your specific error patterns. Was it acoustic, lexical, concentration lapse? Target your weaknesses.
Know thyself, know thy test. Pillar number 2, daily skill building. This is the grind, the conditioning. You have to cultivate genuinely active listening every day. Choose engaging content. Push yourself beyond just catching facts towards inferential understanding and prediction. Deliberately train your ear for diverse global accents. And build that concentration stamina, that mental endurance, gradually weaning yourself off visual crutches like subtitles. Consistency is king here, little and often. And the third pillar, in-test tactical mastery. This is about performing under pressure. Always use those precious seconds before the audio starts for prediction. Prime your brain for the answer type. Relentlessly train your ability to spot paraphrasing and recognize synonyms instantly. Expect them. And develop and practice a clean, efficient system of shorthand to capture those logistical details without losing focus. Be strategic in the moment.
Exactly. And the point is, if you work on these 3 pillars, you're not just becoming someone who can pass a test. You're fundamentally becoming a more agile, a more nuanced, and more confident communicator in any English-speaking environment you find yourself in.
Which is the real goal, isn't it? Beyond the certificate. Now, this whole discussion, especially about accents, it actually raises an interesting final question for you, the listener, to maybe explore on your own.
Okay.
Well, we've established that the IELTS test deliberately uses diverse global accents, British, American, Australian, Canadian, precisely to check if you're ready for real-world communication, right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So if that's the case, how much more beneficial might it be for truly deep, future-proof comprehension to intentionally go beyond those standard test accents in your daily practice?
You mean actively seek out even less common English accents?
Exactly. Think about deliberately finding authentic content interviews, podcasts, maybe news reports featuring speakers with, say, strong regional Scottish accents, or maybe Caribbean English varieties, or perhaps speakers from South Africa, or India, or Singapore. These are all perfectly valid, widely spoken varieties of English, but they often have phonetic features or rhythms that can be quite challenging if you're not used to them.
So deliberately stretching your auditory flexibility even further than the test requires.
Precisely. By future-proofing your comprehension against these less commonly tested but still globally significant varieties of English. Well, firstly, you ensure that pretty much any accent the test could possibly throw at you will feel manageable by comparison. But more importantly, perhaps, you develop this incredibly powerful defense mechanism against the kind of unconscious bias that media often has, favoring only a few dominant accents.
It makes you a truly global listener.
It ensures that no matter where your English conversations take you in the future, no matter who you're speaking with, you'll be better prepared to listen, understand, and connect. Something to think about.